Hello there, Lester Yanovich here for another edition of Wednesday's Wonders. Today's wonder is a little bit on the personal side, but I'm quite sure there are several of you out there that, well, you can relate to my issue. You see, this all happened a little time ago. I was at one of the local water holes, and I was sitting and chatting with one of the regulars there. And after a couple of hours of good libation, he stood up and he said, "Well, my good fellow, you're quite brilliant." Well, being as humble as I am, I just kind of said, "Well, thank you," and went about on my business. But later it made me wonder, why do not others recognize and acknowledge my brilliance? Now, granted, my loving wife recognizes my brilliance, but I find that I have to ask. I have to say something like, "Honey, do you think I'm brilliant?" And of course she says in a very loving way, after she smiles, she says, "Yes, dear." But there again, why don't others recognize my brilliance? So today's wonder is, I wonder, why do others not recognize and acknowledge my brilliance? Let's say our brilliance, because I'm sure a lot of you are in the same situation as I am. Well, I think before we can go further, we have to understand just what brilliance is. And there's several factors to that equation, of course, and for the respect of time, I can't go through all of them, so I thought I'd point out a couple of the most prominent. Well, you see, brilliant people, for one thing, brilliant people, well, they invent things. That's right. They invent a lot of things that we use for our convenience and comfort and things like that. Well, I come from a long line of inventors. My grandfather, for example, as the story goes, was sitting down one day, having a meal and breaking his bread, and he said quite out loud, he said, "There needs to be a bread slicing machine." Well, my grandfather, being a farmer and all, couldn't have the time to go out to the barn and, tinker around and make one, but lo and behold, decades later, what is one of our favorite phrases? We like to say, "Well, that's the best thing since sliced bread." Need I say more? Well, even my own experience, I've come up with many great inventable ideas. But the problem is, I don't have time, just like my grandfather, to go out to the garage and get the tools out and tinker around and actually make one of those things. But I have found that when I say it out loud and others hear it, that somewhere down the road, some Joe down the road, goes to his garage, gets out the tools and tinkers around and actually makes it. The next thing I know, I'll be watching a bit of the television and there's an infomercial with somebody explaining to me, of all people, how wonderful my invention is. So, I am an inventor, which is one of the key factors of being brilliant. Now, the second key factor of being a brilliant person is, well, brilliant people, they say profound things. That's right. Sometimes they actually even write them down. They write great novels, for example, or they'll write in scientific journals to explain the nature of life and the world and science and physics and medicine, all those kinds of things. Well, I have found that, with my brilliance, there again, I don't have the time out of my important things that I do to actually write it down. So I like to let the proletariat class take care of those little minor details and such. And then later on, I read about it and, well, I don't get any credit for it, which, I don't find quite fair, but I see some of my profound wonders being written down in journals or even in novels, believe it or not. So I get that satisfaction myself. So that being said, those are two things that will acknowledge whether or not you're brilliant. If you can invent things and if you say profound things. Now, you all know I say many profound things. But the question then, there again, is why do they not recognize it? And more importantly, why do they not acknowledge it every now and then that we are just brilliant? Well, I can again go through many factors in this equation, but let's focus on two that I think are very, very important. The first one, as it seems, is that others are envious or even jealous of our brilliance. They don't like to give us the satisfaction of acknowledging our brilliance because that will diminish their capacities. Well, there's two advantages to that now, because you see, we know that we're brilliant. So honestly, we don't need the acknowledgement, but we also know that they know that we're brilliant. And that just rips them another one, if you know what I mean. Excuse me, I don't want to be crude with that. So I get along quite well in that respect from those that are jealous or envious, just not wanting to make an acknowledge of it for their own little reasons. Now the other reason is quite important as well. This will explain or take a little bit of explanation for you, because it comes down to what I called sand surfers. That's correct, sand surfers. You see, I believe that we all surf through life, and we all surf on various waves, some higher than others, some lower than others. But sand surfers, well, you can do the math there, I think, on what a sand surfer is. If you can't, well, maybe you're a member of the Sand Surfer Society. Excuse me, I don't mean to laugh. This is serious information here. I'll break it down for you anyway. You see, sand surfers, well, they're stupid. They're so stupid that they can't recognize one's brilliance. And therefore, we can't really hold that against them because, well, they're sand surfers and they just don't understand what brilliance is all about because they're stupid. And the other thing about sand surfers / stupid people is that, well, they don't know they're stupid. I mean, really, if they knew they were stupid, why would they say all that stupid crap that comes out of their damn mouths? You know what I mean? So all we can do is, for that type, is just forgive them their stupidity as they sit on the beach waiting for that big wave of sand to push them along in life. So we'll cut them some slack now, won't we? So I guess in conclusion, the only thing I can say is that, well, brilliant people like myself and many of you out there, well, we don't need the accolades and we don't need the acknowledgement because, well, we know we're brilliant. And that's all that really matters, isn't it? Because, at the end of the day, when we, brilliant people, lay our heads down on that pillow, we know two things. The sun will continue to rise, and our brilliance will continue to glow. So with that, I'll leave you with this wonder. But before I do, I have another question for you. And this is specifically for you. Even the sand surfers could answer this. The question is, if there was a time machine, and yes, I may invent one someday and actually go out to the garage and tinker around and put it together. But until then, let's say for now, if there was a time machine and you could go into the future and meet with your great, 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 great grandchild. And that grandchild had but one question for you. And that question is, what was the most important thing you learned from your parents? I'd appreciate an answer below if you wouldn't mind. It would help me make a new wonder in the wonderful world we live in. So for now, I'm going to leave you and see you next week for next week's Wednesday Wonder. I wonder what that'll be. See you then.